Senhoras e senhores, bom dia. A
Ladies and
Associação
gentlemen, good morning. The Brazilian Association of Intellectual Property has the pleasure of starting this 40th International Congress of Intellectual Property remotely as demanded by these times. The role of intellectual property in digital transformation is one of our main topics, which is critical for analyzing the legal consequences, as it is the case of our participants today. It is one of the largest in Latin America, joining international and national authorities involved in improving the intellectual property systems in Brazil and in the world. We'd like to greet everyone, and I'd like to invite Luiz Edgar Montari Pimenta, President of the Brazilian Association of Intellectual Property, Claudio Furtado, President of the Brazilian PTO, José Graça Aranha, Regional Director of AMPI, the World Organization of International Intellectual Property, so Chief Executive Office of the International Trademark Association, Luiz Henrique do Amaral, President-elect of the ABPI, International Association for the Protection of Intellectual Property, Elizabeth Cincin Amaral, ASIP's President, Inter-American Association of Intellectual Property, Tatiana Campelo, member of the board of LES Brazil, the Association of Licensing Executives, and member of the board of LES International, Joemiro Paduano Gonçalves, executive manager of CNI, Felipe Lundgren, president of the Committee of Intellectual Property of the Brazilian Bar Association, Matilhas Nightingale, president of the Argentinian Association of Intellectual Property, Rodrigo Pruki, president of the Chilean Intellectual Property Association, Alvaro Barreto, president of ABAPI, Brazilian Association of Agents of Industrial Property, and Marcelo do Nascimento Aspes, president, the Sao Paulo Association of Intellectual Property. We'd like to greet the authorities that are here this morning, in special the members of the board of the ABPI, the organizing committee of the event, are sponsors without whom this event would not be possible. We'd like to thank them wholeheartedly. We'd like to welcome the president of ABPI, Dr. Luiz Edgar Montari Pimenta. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to greet everyone. It is a really beautiful day today here in Rio de Janeiro. Welcome to this International Congress of Intellectual Property of the BPI, one of the largest events in Latin America. And for well-known reasons, this is a remote event. It is a great joy to see the participation of the main players of intellectual property in Brazil and around the world. We have here over 1,200 participants, an incredible number for us at ABPI. Other than the Brazilian participants, we also have foreigners. We have them from all the Americas, from Europe, from Africa, and Asia. I'd like to thank you all, our foreigner guests, for participating. Other authorities and representatives of recognized associations and entities of intellectual property in Brazil and in the world. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the participation of all the people, all the participants in this solemn panel, and all the authorities that have spent the time, as well as all the participants in the Congress. This is the first Congress, ABPI Congress, 100% remotely. Naturally, this is driven by the situation the planet is living today that has taken us by surprise, and we really hope that this situation will be overcome soon. because of this, ABPI, which was going through a strong modernizing process, had to reinvent itself in a more accelerated way. And this is what brought us here. With the help of technology, we have really managed to evolve. We have managed to modernize ABPI to meet the needs and expectations of our partners, members, and collaborators. There has been great efforts. It was not an easy task. We invested in a more modernized positioning. We have renewed our brand. We have launched an application to expand and make it easier to access through the social media. Our publication is 100% online and it's very easy to access. We have also organized webinars, lives, podcasts dealing with very interesting topics. And this is how we managed to expand participation in social media incredibly. And the contents of these events are increasingly of better quality. The use of technology has allowed us to expand our audience. Now anybody can take part in any activity of BPI from anywhere in Brazil, anywhere in the world. So ABPI has become a place for online meeting, and I hope that soon physical meeting for all those studying and working with intellectual property. For all this to be possible, it was essential to have the full dedication of the board of ABPI, especially Erica Denise, our executive director, and her team. I'd like to thank them wholeheartedly. The plenary sessions, the panels, and table topics in this Congress under the umbrella of the topic, the role of intellectual property in the digital transformation. This is a very updated topic, and this has always permeated all the actions for the organization of this event. So many people have made the efforts for this event to be happening today. I'd like to thank them all. I'd like to announce the presentation of economist Eduardo Loyo for the prospects of economic recovery. It's going to be interesting also to hear what the chairman of the Brazilian PTO, Mr. Claudio Furtado, I'd like to thank him especially. He underwent a surgery very recently and he's here with us. And he has a lot to tell us, a lot about Brazilian PTO's work plan for the next 3 years in modernizing the Brazilian PTO. For many years, there were so many complaints, fair complaints, about some flaws at the Brazilian PTO, and they have now been tackled and have somewhat been resolved steadily. I'd like to mention an initiative of the Ministry of the Economy to rethink the interministerial group of intellectual property and the public call to define a national strategy for intellectual property, which is always going to be under debate during this Congress. Another point that needs to be mentioned, and it's going to be of great interest, and it's also going to be part of the debate, is about rights of creations or inventions coming from artificial intelligence. Barbara Fialko is going to talk about this topic. Other topics are going to be part of the debates during the 4 days. Other than the 4 plenaries, there will be 8 panels dealing with interesting topics to all of you, I believe. And we're also going to have the table topics. These are more focused sessions, 16 table topics dealing with a number of topics.
Continue inviting Minister Humberto Martins, who will address the audience. Good morning to all of you. Initially, I would like to thank Dr. Luiz Edgar Pimenta, the chairman of the Brazilian Association of Intellectual Property, and I'd like to thank him for the invitation addressed to me to discuss this topic. The central topic of this Congress, the 40th International Congress on Intellectual Property, organized by ABPI, is the role of intellectual property in digital transformation. And also, I would like to congratulate this event and also congratulate Dr. Eduardo Loyo, who is a member of board of directors of BTG Pactual, for his brilliant presentation in which he developed this topic, prospects for economic recovery. So, as I greet Dr. Eduardo Loyo, I would like to extend my greeting to all the speakers, to all those who are attending this major international congress, and who certainly can be already defined as a very successful initiative due to the importance of the topic being discussed and due to the participation of so many people in such a relevant topic, the role of intellectual property in digital transformation. I can state now at the beginning of my presentation, I can state that there is a book of wisdom that is useful for all of us in our daily lives, especially in terms of how important our lives are in social, economic, and political participation, and how important they are to contribute to the growth of the country. A very wise person says that light is shed for those who are fair and correct at heart. We have to act with friendship, love, and responsibility, working intensely, being alert and vigilant vis-a-vis our planning and our activity in terms of economic, social, and political development. That's why I stress that I am very pleased and highly committed, Professor André Luiz, when I reaffirm my pleasure in taking part in this Congress, the 40th International Congress on Intellectual Property. And I would like to thank once more the invitation from the chairman of the Brazilian Association of Intellectual Property, Mr. Luiz Edgar Pimenta. The development of a country is always related to, and the growth of a country is always related to its capacity to be an entrepreneur in terms of the corporate activity, the industrial activity of a country. The greater this is, the greater its level of wealth production. In the current world, in the world of development, in a world of cyber activity, there is a consensus as to the importance of the development of information technology as well as communication technology, so as to be able to maintain and to generate goods and well-being in society. Some part of the literature believes that we are undergoing the fourth industrial revolution. And in this sense, in this under this perspective, I believe that resilient development depends heavily on the incentive given to the entrepreneurship of individuals. We have to establish goals. We have to be committed vis-a-vis our growth. Companies that were created by our people are the main source of economic and social benefits for Brazil. I can also reiterate that corporate activities generate jobs and income that benefit the population in general. And they are the ones directly responsible for creating products and for the circulation of services which are essential for life in society. Taxes generated by corporate activities allow the state to exercise its functions in terms of providing social assistance, especially to the less fortunate segment of society. The more a country has a spirit of entrepreneurship, more this country will be able to grow from the economic, social, and political perspective. History shows that no country in the world was able, without a planning, was able to develop or was able to develop without giving incentives to and protecting the entrepreneurial activity. So in this sense, I would like to add that the topics that will be discussed in this important international congress, such as this first lectures, perspectives of economic recovery. These are extremely relevant topics, just as others that will be important for intellectual property. We all know that intellectual property is the legal tool for protection of innovation brought about by people and companies.
So, one can say that intellectual property is a set of goods that come out of human intelligence. This involves the protection of trademarks as well as corporate names, copyrights, and intellectual inventions such as patents, utility models, as well as industrial design, as well as clamping down on unfair competition. Without this protection, that would be no reason for an individual or a company to invest time and financial resources in developing a new idea. investments in creating innovation and has to guarantee the innovation investor to collect the economic results of its invention. Brazil has a legal framework that tends to the primary needs to intellectual property protection. However, we do need every day to offer all those who are willing to invest in Brazil to have legal, permanent legal stability, including case law in the court systems protected by federal laws, and in the higher courts, private rights being protected in the superior courts. In a digital world, in the global world where we live, where the business environment is constantly changing, it is important that legislators can predict to regulate for new needs for protection. That is why these initiatives for studies and debates on very current issues, on very pressing issues on intellectual property are very important. Intense use of technology in today's world has impacts on intellectual property. We live in a society, in a technological society, and every day we see tens of new inventions through our smartphones. We are now working remotely using online communication systems, especially during the pandemic, when we are developing technology through remote work. We can monitor our households through softwares, as well as surveillance cameras. In a nutshell, our life is permeated by technology and novelty on a daily basis in a very imposing way. Given this situation, new companies emerge. These companies adapt to reality, the reality of the pandemic, and they are also going to adapt to the post-pandemic times. And our business in the knowledge economy, in the technology economy, where innovation capacity is the most valuable asset for any company, for any initiative, for any business, even more important than capital or workforce. It is important to mention that knowledge and innovation have become a social regulator, contributing to the growth of nations. Knowledge is managed. When knowledge is managed in the right way, in an adequate way, in a viable way, then you have a more efficient driving of economic and social development. One example is the use of artificial intelligence. Today, the main element of our management plan in the higher court of justice, we prioritize artificial intelligence for faster sentences, judgments, trials under the Tribunal da Cidadania. In the last few years, there have been an explosion, a boom of innovation around the world. In the United States and China are leading this process. Intellectual property protection and this kind of activity is a major challenge, as it imposes our thinking on what's the most efficient way of protecting inventions resulting from an artificial intelligence, such as songs, works of arts, texts produced by machines, copyrights, invention rights applied to artificial intelligence have to be reviewed. All these concepts must be constantly reviewed, as we're dealing with active technologies. We're talking about dynamic technologies. So one needs to constantly check in the most efficient way to protect inventors' rights and developing ways of stimulating more inventions. The dispute settlement methods resulting from the use of new technologies and protection of intellectual property also need to evolve in order to be able to keep up the dynamic nature of these new relations. A delay inherent to any lawsuit, which has to respect procedures and the right of an ample defense and a fair response, is not compatible with the needs for reducing times brought about by the use of new technologies. Those who judge and their participation in highly complex, dynamic situations, a result of the application of new technologies, also constitutes a major challenge. So, more adequate methods for settling these disputes is a condition for conferring more protection to intellectual property development. I will mention as an example the creation of chambers of mediation, arbitration and mediation of intellectual property issues, formed by experts in this area of knowledge, using internet communication with dialogue mediated through meeting platforms, online meeting platforms, but also virtual platforms. The judiciary has to evolve every day, has to grow in terms of technology in order to respond sufficiently, respond viably and adequately to the disputes that are so specific. Creation of special expert courts in corporate law is seen as a current trend for the development of technology, and so that we can respond quickly and efficiently to questions, issues in terms of industrial property intelligence. Major corporate centers such as Sao Paulo and the city of Sao Paulo and Rio de Janeiro already have expert courts on corporate law. For the Court of Appeals of the state of Sao Paulo, the largest court system in number of lawsuits, in number of magistrates and courts, the Court of Appeals of the state of Sao Paulo is already there in the second court level and also in the trial court system. Today, there's the National Forum of Judges, corporate judges, named FONAGEM. Their work makes it possible for a constant dialogue between judges examining and entertaining law matters in lawsuits that have to do with intellectual and industrial property. It joins over 130 judges from around Brazil with competence to judge issues related to corporate law, including intellectual property. And we have moved on, and we are going to continue to move on, moving on when it comes to intellectual property protection. However, the constant and fast evolution of innovation will demand that we continue to think about new challenges, always seeking to keep up with the evolution of times. Law is dynamic, technology evolves by the minute. We need to be able to be inside the communication and technology era. I am convinced that ideas that are going to be discussed during this International Congress, attended by eminent professors and participants that have a very important role in this area, will represent and bring about fantastic subsidies for legislators and the Brazilian justice system, as well as the superior courts, in the difficult task of keeping up with case law. As I mentioned a minute ago, the role is to interpret constitutional law and harmonizing case law. With the constitutional amendment, we are going to fulfill our true mission, which is to interpret the federal law and not as a court, as a review court of second level. That is not our mission. Our mission is a case law mission, harmonizing and interpreting the major thesis of federal law, and not as a court to entertain appeals from second-level courts. At the end of the day, we can say that this rapid evolution for updating the needs for driving entrepreneurship in Brazil is going to be our goal, our objective, our meeting point, as well as our point for debate in the citizenship court at the higher court of justice. We are going through a revolution caused by digitalization of life. All productive suits or processes are changed, now affected by machine learning. This is the fourth industrial revolution, as we have mentioned initially. The law environment, be it in Brazil or industrialized countries, we have a tendency to look into a new work market, welcoming new innovative companies. Routine activities and conventional forms of work will be changed in a very near future. These changes have already been operated during the pandemic that has surprised the planet. But court system and the judiciary has been and is prepared and alert to respond to all legal challenges posed by society in interpreting the law and interpreting the Constitution through a system that we call technology and online remote work, advancing in terms of technology, especially in artificial intelligence, and why not the intelligence, not call it intelligence of intellectual property. The core activity of the judiciary and lawmakers and councils will come into a new phase, a post-pandemic phase. In my opinion, artificial intelligence is definitely going to contribute in an efficient way, always advancing towards the growth, conferring stability and a fair legal framework for causes, making sure that the system has consolidated case law and protects the causes. We have to be humble, to be careful, to have a public spirit, but above all, we need to be able to apply the law properly, spreading justice so that the justice is the ongoing will to give everyone what belongs to them, with a lot of wisdom, with a lot of technology. Moving on, using artificial intelligence, and also making the fourth revolution, the fourth industrial revolution, is going to be the guidance for a social, economic, and political growth of the nations of our planet. I hope and I wish to you great success in this scientific and academic journey. I'd like to greet the organizers through Luis Edgar Pimenta, the chairman, and I also like to greet all the speakers through Eduardo Loyal, our economist who spoke this morning. Let's move on. Working hard, dedication, with dedication and responsibility, always moving on, never moving back. We should not throw stones to the past. We need to pick up the stones to build a new future. God bless all of us together, holding hands in democratic institutions. Everything for Brazil, everything for legal stability, with growth and evolution to the benefit of humanity, because human beings are the main instrument of everything. We are just tenants at power. The owners of powers is the citizen. Thank you so much. We would like to thank the participation of His Excellency Minister Humberto Marci, President of the Superior Court of Justice. We now move on with the next topic, which is the Brazilian PT work plan for the next 3 years. We are going to have Gabriel Leonardo, Peter Simpson, Vice Presidents and second Vice Presidents of the Brazilian Association of Intellectual Property.
Obrigado, Érica. Grande prazer estar aqui com vocês nesse evento com mais de 1.200 inscritos. Parabéns a Érica pela organização, absolutamente.
It's a great pleasure to be here with a very large audience, and I would like to go on with our debate. We will have the president of the BPTO, Dr. Furtado, and we have directors from the same institution, Júlio Moreira, Mrs. Lages, among others. So let's follow the presentations, and I hope we'll have time for one or two questions. Peter and I are ready for that, but if there's no time for such questions, it means that they have been already answered. Dr. Furtado has a degree from the Federal University. He has also a master's degree from the Getúlio Vargas Foundation. He also has a degree from the University of Chicago. He has a doctorate degree from Getúlio Vargas Foundation. He has a large experience in the private sector. In terms of intellectual property, he became well known when he was appointed to the BPTO, and we are very happy to have a new perspective that has been brought by Dr. Cláudia Furtado, and which has brought much progress to our institution. We are working hard, and our most successful area is fighting the patent backlog. So let's hear Dr. Furtado, and thank you so much for being here, Dr. Furtado. You have the floor. Thank you so much. Good morning to all of you. I'd like to greet the 1,200 attendees of this Congress. And I would like to thank the organization of ABPI for this opportunity of being here today with you. And I am very honored to be in this position together with all the other directors of the BPTO, Dr. Lage, who is replacing me in the presidency, Dr. André da Luz, who is director of trademark, and he also replaced me. He was acting president in the first days of October. Dr. Moreira, the administration director, who was a unique person in his contribution for working online in record time. And due to this initiative, our organization has been working non-stop since we started our recess due to the pandemic. And I also would like to apologize, and Dr. Montauri already mentioned it. I am recovering from a orthopedic surgery. It was a planned surgery. It was not an emergency, fortunately. But of course, this time of recovery has some impacts in cognitive as well as motor aspects. So you won't see me with the same intellectual liveliness nor movements that I think I showed in the period before this process. But just as we as a country face a major difficulty during the pandemic, we were faced with the reality of 14 million unemployed people, 20 million people who are somehow being strongly impacted by food security. And what I mean by that is hunger. And there's a very serious risk. The risk of not being able to keep this immense need that we have to uphold our fiscal credibility. We unfortunately have to go through these periods. We have to keep our eyes on the future, knowing that things will improve. I personally am recovering very well, and I'm very grateful for the directors for being so helpful. First of all, I would like to say that I was greeted and complimented as someone who has brought a new perspective to our institution, the BPTO. But let me tell you the truth, this already existed when I arrived, and it did exist in its leadership and its managerial team, technical team, and this spirit was at the highest level. I've only seen that in the very best international corporations when I worked in such corporations in the board of directors. In 2019, I believe that it was only a nudge leading the institution to a turning point that was needed. That was all that was needed. Credibility in the government, which was brought by a minister of the economy, which has very distinguished characteristics, and I compared him to Mr. Rosales or Mr. Goulion, who have been ministers in previous administrations. It was also due to the scrutiny and support of the Secretary of Productivity and Employment, Mr. Costa, who claimed that intellectual property is a pillar of Brazilian development, of Brazilian society in general, not only economically speaking. So respecting intellectual property playing a role internationally, being part of an international scenario means creating a country that is fair, that respects the rights of those who invent and create. And this is essential for our development. And it was precisely under these circumstances that I joined the BPTO in 2019. At that point, before anything else, we needed our team with all its potential to overcome certain aspects that were holding them behind and tying it to the past. But it was because of this team, because of this very talented team, that the trademark segment under BPTO was, at the time, we already had 300,000 requests filed in that year of 2019, and it was due to the team, thanks to the effort of this team, that an internal project was created. And let me stress this again. It didn't mean adopting a provisional measure that would put an end to the backlog immediately, but rather something that would support the competent work, the serious work of our examiners. And this became reality in a very extensive project of fighting backlog. There were different fronts. We were going to change the work environment, the examination procedure. Certain attempts have been done in the past, had been passed in the past. There was a very important process of convincing our team internally of all those who were there. And this process was only effective due to our leadership, Dr. Lage, who was leading this fight. So what we were striving to do at the end of 2019, fighting to insert Brazil in the Madrid Protocol, which is completing now 1 year, and in October had 5 trademarks registered. And today, the condition is very favorable. The Madrid Protocol, under the leadership of Dr. André Valussier, is being very successful. The fact that we were able to implement this fight against backlog, which achieved a reduction of 19% at the end of the year. So 650,000 requests for filings for patent. This was already a reduction obtained in the first year, and it was a result of an extraordinary effort of our team and our leadership. And to approach the coming 3 years, it is very important also to remind what started it all, which was our action plan. Plan which is currently being rolled out. This plan was developed shortly before the pandemic erupted. It became ready in the first days of March. It's a very ambitious plan. The institution sees as its major mission not only to carry out a technically serious work and legally safe, efficient from the perspective of production and technical exams and records, but the BPTO, which saw as a fundamental point to extend the volume of filings. And let me remind you that we were always discussing dissemination, and this is something very important, a change in view that is going to prevail over the next 3 years. To disseminate means planting, cultivating, and harvesting results. And harvesting results at our institution and for Brazilian society is translated in numbers of filings. So our ambition in the beginning was to have a 20% growth in terms of the number of filings and patents. We would reach 34,000 in 1 year and 285,000 filings for a trademark this year. So I'm just giving you some relevant examples. And evidently, when it came to March 13, we were faced with the pandemic, with the need to rethink the way our organization works. Fortunately, at that point, we had already in place not only a planning tool, which would allow us to distribute among the organization 91 priority activities broken down in over 300 activities that would be attributed to different areas and sectors of the administration. We carry out a strategic choice. We listed the strategic choices that were going to be important for the year, which we had started discussing in 2019, and we also established quantitative goals of commercial nature. We like to call it aspirational targets. And one of our directors, when talking about it, this was February, beginning of March. So one of our directors said that these were the pre-carnival aspirational targets, which was to grow 24% that year. But we were faced with the pandemic, the reduction in trademarks, 27 all over the world, 27%, 35% in some countries. And there we were discussing pre-carnival goals. But now in June, we have already gone back to 29, 30,000 filings or requests for trademarks, which if we were to consider all over the year, we would reach 350,000. So we got to the conclusion that we have to establish such aspirational goals and we have to believe in them. So we proceeded throughout 6 important lines of action, which have been established as our strategic needs of high impact.
And this is going to follow us in the next 3 years. I will then give the floor to each member of our board to make their comments. Our backlog reduction plan is going to continue until 2021. Our goal is this year to have reduced backlog to 52% of the 160 applications that we found in August. And then the goal of reducing 80% the backlog until the end of 2021. So this fight against the backlog really is a problem that is being solved. We have another very important activity that is already happening at the Brazilian PTO. The objective of within 3 years, which started this year during the pandemic actually, the Brazilian PTO has to be turned into a world-class patent office, one of the 21st century, with the Prosperity Fund launched by the British government, international consultancy, together with the Fundação Getúlio Vargas consultancy, the University of São Paulo, and the Propimex, an expert in process design, are acting to assist us in reviewing 8 or 9 of the 19 Brazilian PTO processes geared towards quality and risk management. Another very important point is what has been mentioned, the digital transformation of the Brazilian PTO. This is another strategic plan led by a task force, which is a management model we created in 2019, one of the first models we created in March 2019, that has been used to develop strategic programs in the Brazilian PTO. The program aims at digital access to all stakeholders. This you can see already on our new website. Access to all services are on our website. We hired a really important consultant to confer more efficiency in our IT area and developing technology solutions that can be used with the best practices that the Brazilian PTO has adopted. We also have human capital development program ongoing. Julio will detail the program, and this aims to increase technical skills and management skills of our people. Always conducting this with more efficiency in mind. I'd like to say that the Brazilian PTO, through this 21st century project, is benchmarking through best practices of the best patent offices in the world. We selected 7 reference benchmarking patent offices to guide our efforts. The first benchmark report we should be getting towards the second week of November. And the most important point, the message to take home today. ABPI, or the Brazilian PTO, cannot just be a patent and trademark office. We need to go beyond that. We need to foster the use of intellectual property by the Brazilian society. Fostering means to be mentors to those individuals, companies, scientists, through techniques or technologies such as the one we're using here today, helping them in their applications that are going to be competent for these applications, connected with these applications, is the main challenge that we have in cooperation with other entities in intellectual property. We need to raise the quality of the applications that we get, but we need to work there in the grassroots, next to scientists at universities, someone who is guiding a student in some kind of paper that may turn into an intellectual property application. We have this system which is already ongoing, and the benchmark for this is the efforts we have operated since the end of last year with the Federal University of Campina Grande in the state of Paraíba. Today, #1 in patent applications. This is the model we are bringing about for other research development centers. This project called ANPI Negócios, Brazilian PTO Business Plan, is one of the projects with the most impact of the work of the Brazilian PTO towards the Brazilian society. This is our #1 priority. In 2020, we have been experimenting a number of formats, a number of models. The pandemic has really placed a challenge for us in using in a much larger scale the digital model. And then on the 10th of August, we launched the digital mentorship program for registration applications for intellectual property. My time is up. I only had 15 minutes. I am very close to the limits of my cognitive capacity for today. So I will give the floor to the other board members, who I would like to thank wholeheartedly for leading, for being so available and committed to the development of the Brazilian PTO and under this common view that we share in creating a 21st century patent office. I will continue until the end of this plenary. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Chairman Claudio Furtado. I would like to thank you for your participation, especially given the fact that you are recovering. I would like now to give the floor to Jacqueline Honker, thanking her for her participation. She has a degree in international relations from the São Paulo University, a degree from the Barcelona University, and she is leading the Fourth Revolution at the Ministry of Economy. Jacqueline, go ahead. You have the floor. Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. It is a great pleasure to be part of this event, which is an international reference when it comes to the debate in exchanging ideas and intellectual property. I'd like to thank ABPI for the invitation. I'd like to greet every participant, and also I'd like to take the opportunity to congratulate the ABPI for their efforts in fighting to reduce the backlog, and also their strategic plans, as in the ANPI Negócios project that was mentioned by Claudio. Throughout the 2020, the Ministry of Economy has led the national strategy for international property. It was the first time that we organized as a government with the academia and society to implement a strategic future plan for intellectual property for the next 10 years in Brazil. There was a detailed study of the international property system, and we wrote a benchmark for international strategy with over 200 participants, 12 workshops, and a number of contributions in the public call that has just closed. I'm not going to go into details in terms of strategy because there is going to be a panel dedicated to this national strategy during this event. But I'd like to say that this work was only possible because in 2019 we changed the interministerial group of intellectual property that was under a certain ministry and had some formal limitations, and they were under foreign trade. Today, it is chaired by our special secretary for jobs and competitiveness and productivity, and has a more comprehensive competence for intellectual property governance of this strategy is going to be under this interministerial group with the representation of the civil society soon. So by closing the strategy still this year, we intend to strengthen this interministerial group, giving it responsibilities and tools to execute an action plan in the medium and long term that is going to be defined soon too. Other than these issues of governance and institutional strengthening, it is important to us at the ministry to modernize the intellectual property framework, developing innovation, stimulate competition, and above all, to make it easier for people to use the system. More than ever, we consider important to improve the regulatory framework for digital transformation for the data-driven economy. And for this, we need to have the intellectual property agenda close to the digital transformation, and then develop the regulatory frameworks, government policies, and incentives so that they are enabling producing and adoption of technologies, but also flexible systems to resist a test of time within a context of fast technology progress. We have seen a number of interesting discussions, such as protection of commercial secrets in blockchain that could bring benefits such as transparency and reliability. However, for this to be possible, standards and norms need to be developed. So this is a different discussion, a very important discussion, which is protection for large big data groups. These data sets are very valuable when commercially, but they are not very good in terms of intellectual property protection. There was a study in 2018 about projects showing that 1/3 of companies that were interviewed were already selling or planning to sell data collected from their products and services. So the expectation is that IoT data, for example, is going to be part of our lives. So today, with more than 9 billion IoT devices already connected, the market is the way it is. What is it going to be like in 2025 when the expectation is to get to 64 billion devices? What's the market going to look like? What's going to be the regulatory framework, the institutional framework that is going to support the development? As Excellency Minister Martins, these are used for artificial intelligence algorithm we know that they are highly sophisticated with neural levels, and they're very effective. So what's the impact on the creative economy? What copyrights, what's going to be the behavior of copyrights when the computer is not just a tool, but the computer is taking decisions in the creative product?
Por mais que a gente ainda não esteja lá, são questões que precisam estar na pauta e aproximar temas de PI, proteção de dados, da política de inovação é essencial para a gente construir o que entendemos hoje como sociedade 5.0. No nosso entendimento, não haverá a sociedade 5.0 sem previsibilidade, segurança jurídica, inovação, privacidade, proteção de dados e também ética, certo? Enfim, eu encerro a minha fala parabenizando novamente os organizadores, especialmente por trazer à tona esse tema tão importante da transformação digital, e desejo a todos um excelente evento. Obrigada.
Doutora Jaqueline, muito obrigado.
And I wish you all a good event. Dr. Jacqueline, thank you very much. I will now give the floor to my colleague at ABPI, Dr. Peter Simpsons. Before that, one announcement. At 11, we will have our panels starting. We are having a panel on the illegal market and the risk of local divestment with Dr. Mantu, Paulo Campante, moderated by colleague Rodrigo Ouro Preto, also a director of ABPI. And at the same time, we'll have a panel on patents and artificial intelligence with Dr. Barbara Fiacco from AIPLA, Wagner Latch from INPI, Edson Souza from Bayer, and my colleague Claudio from ABPI. So the participants please feel free, if you are interested in those panels, to log off from this plenary session at 11 and log into the plenary or to the panel you wish to watch. Good morning, ladies. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Before I give the floor, I would like to discuss some comments that were made about such important progress in such a short period of time. It is a great pleasure for me to participate in this panel, and obviously I have been appreciating the comments from the chairs and directors. Well, without further ado, I would like to introduce Dr. Júlio César Castelo Branco Reis Moreira, a very well-known person at INPI, at Brazil's patent office, today carrying out a very important function as the administrative director of the agency. He has a degree in chemical engineering, a master's in petroleum chemical engineering. He is a researcher in industrial property since 1998, and currently he has a very important function as the administrative director of INPI. Until 2018, he worked with patents. He was a patent examiner from 1998 to 2011. He is specialized in public management from FGV. I also want to stress that Julio's function today is a key one in the great effort that INPI has been carrying out, and very successfully so, although sometimes there are difficulties in investment capabilities, especially in technologies. So congratulations, Julio, and I give you the floor. Good morning to all. Thank you for the opportunity. Can you hear me well? Perfect. So as not to go beyond my 5 minutes, and I will even try to shorten it, I will be very objective. I have actually 8 points to cover about INPI for the next 3 years. The first one, which is crucial and has mentioned here, is the strengthening, further strengthening of our IT area. INPI is in need of expanding its capabilities to provide the necessary speed and agility to our users, and so that we can provide information rapidly and without any difficulty in processing the applications that are submitted to our institute. I say that because we are already working on the emergency level. We have digitized processes. All our processes have been digitized and harmonized. So we do not want to reduce, we need to reduce rework because we don't have a sufficient number of people, and we need to double our IT capacity. The second point is to have our documents digitized. We will do that and offer them for public consultation by society in general. And this requires technological management. Today, access to information is still very poor because our documents are not fully digitized. So our idea is to offer these documents and to put them also available as sources for researchers and individuals so that we can increase our critical mass concerning IP in the country. Another work that will be continued along the next 3 years, which Claudio also mentioned, is the mapping of our macro processes. And more important than that, to be compliant with what is expected from INPI. By compliance, I mean compliance in themselves, compliance with the control agencies, compliance with the risk assessment of each process, and also including integrity risks. We need to adjust INPI to the rules of the federal government so that we can have our actions totally transparent. And this is our ultimate goal, to provide total, full transparency so that we can show the work that is being carried out. Once we have this, a very important point after this consultancy is to resize the work done by INPI or measure the work done by INPI. It is impossible for INPI to know whether we have the proper number of people in our different areas. We really need to map, design, and survey these numbers so that we can optimize people in the different functions at the Institute. After we have that, the next step would be to expand our work. INPI, in its trademarks and patents area, had some contact with telework, and we believe that this telework or remote work can be done not only in our headquarters, but also in the regional branches. And with that, we will have a much greater capacity for our regional branches, and at the same time, we will have a shortcut into INPI's near future strategies, which is to expand INPI's action in the different states, in the different regions, so that we can improve our results and speed up the patent procedures in Brazil. Having done that, and in my view, something that is not being looked into presently and must be at least in the next 3 years is to revisit our career plans at INPI. And by revisiting, I don't say that INPI needs to become a formal government career, and I'm not talking about raising salaries. What I do mean is that INPI's career plan presently is too much focused on the academic area. It promotes workers according to their college training, and this is not the goal of the Institute. To perform an analysis of the career plan does not mean to ask for raises or more people. It means that in the current system we have today, we want to readjust our career plans so that we can expand the Institute's activity, improve meritocracy and the general results. And for that, 3 points are of the essence. First of all, to resize and measure our performance assessment. Our performance assessment must be focused on the services that we provide. It is not meaningful to demand that a patent professional needs to have so many articles published along a year. It is no meaning in promoting workers almost automatically, and after 15 years, they will achieve the top of their career and they will have to serve for additional 15 years. And another very important point that we will implement and that is already being studied is the learning process for INPI workers. And here we have 2 paths, one which is focused on the technical aspects and another educational trail focused on management. We believe that with that, we will strengthen both sides, both management and the technical part of the INPI. And in the plan with prosperity, we are also working on gender equality in INPI. Although we say that this is fair, we have still not measured how gender equality is seen in our institute. So we want to bring both men and women. We want equality between men and women. For example, now summer is starting in Rio. It is inhuman to have a worker coming in a suit and tie to work in this building. We also want to relax the dress code during summer. Thank you very much and good day to all. Thank you, Julio. Thank you for the information. They really show your high capacity, your efficiency, and your enthusiasm. And I really appreciated your last comments about relaxing the dress code so that workers can go to work in a more proper attire for the Rio de Janeiro summer. And without further ado, I give the floor to Liane Lage. She has a degree in chemical engineering from the Minas Gerais Federal College. She has a master's in chemical engineering from COPE, UFRJ. PhD in IP from Cefet in Rio. She has been a researcher at the Northeastern Petrochemical Company and also at the UFRJ Federal College in Rio, researching in processes and membranes. Since 1990 or since 2008, she works for INPI. She has been the head of the Organic Chemistry Department, General Coordinator of Patents, and Director of Patents, Computer Software, and Integrated Circuits, which is her current function. Dr. Liane Lage requires no further introduction, and the great success of the plan to do away with the backlog in the patent plans was led by her, and it was a very impressive work. Liane, just a minute. I was asked to make another announcement. All the presentations, including the plenary session, will be recorded and will be offered to all participants after the event. So we are holding 2 simultaneous panels now, so please feel free to stay with us or to go on to a different panel, and then you can come back later and watch this panel. Good morning to everyone. Thank you, Dr. Claudio and ABPI, to give this time for us directors. The backlog plan was a success, but it is a success that was due to the whole team. Today, actually, we know it is a success, but when we think about the next 3 years, we think about where we want to arrive. We want to be more and more aligned with society's needs, responding to the challenge of being a key actor, a key player in innovation in Brazil. Besides that, we want to be increasingly closer to international practices, putting Brazil among the major players for IP in the world. Our present optimism with the backlog reduction program is because it was a pillar for our future programs. For 2021, we expect to reduce 80% of our backlog of patent applications. We intend to eliminate the single paragraph of the Article 40, which is so much discussed. And for the next 3 years, we intend to have our first exam after 2 years with a decision made in 3 years. So we think that this is possible. We are working together with the different directorates, and we believe that we will be able to shorten our period or our time limit to 2 years to accept the patent applications and 3 years to finally analyze and accept them. So I divided our future programs into some key aspects. The first thing that also goes through the administrative directorate is that we need a more horizontal flow chart with more and more integrated teams. And maybe that will lead us to the live organism management model. So in the following 3 years, we expect to make these changes. We also need to find solutions to fully automate our processing flows, enabling optimization of steps and speedier publications. There are patent applications that have been fully restored, and this is a problem we face currently, but we are finally solving them with the help of all, especially our users, also improving and speeding the computer software, and this is already successful. We have been raising our speeds greatly thanks to the team that works in our computer software sector. And we also need to work on quality. How will we further develop our quality and to have more productivity with quality? And for that, we do intend to use AI tools for examinations. This is closer than you can imagine, as well as the consolidation of all our examination procedures and rules, the development of an image process for the certain patents, the PPH agreements, we need to make them as agile as possible. And for examiners, and this is very important, examiners well trained in the most important functions according to the needs of each area, and also to create patents doc, a repository of information available on our website for the users. For the PCT, we need to discuss Resolution 57, and we must have a new proposal to restore the priority rights. In terms of technology, we need to restructure our study areas with more technology development, especially during the pandemic. This has become key to access existing information and to treat this information. And for that, we had a great example with the COVID Observatory. We need to automate data generation at the Infotech, and it is also very important to consolidate an internal search machine, as the large firms have, besides providing documents before 1971, as was already mentioned.
We know that we have many challenges ahead of us, but we have a well-trained team and they're all committed in providing services according to the compliance required by the society. This is our plan for the next 3 years, and I hope that we're all pursuing this goal together. Dr. Liani, thank you very much once again. This summary of what is today INPI patents and what we intend to do in the upcoming years, it only shows your capacity, and therefore we thank you very much for the information shared with us. I'm going to turn over now to Dr. André Luiz. He has been a federal prosecutor since 84 at INPI. He has used or he has served as a general prosecutor, and since January 2017, he has successfully been the director of the new brand board of directors with industrial designs and geographic indications, which came about with INPI's restructuring in 2016. There's no question that we should highlight the work done by Dr. André and his team. They have successfully faced the huge challenge to implement Madrid's protocol at INPI without losing pace, which is excellent in the examination and concession of brands by INPI. Dr. André, please. Even though you don't believe, I will try to be brief. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, colleagues from the plenary, which I would like to greet President Claudio Furtado, Minister Martins, and all of my other colleagues. Actually, I am on vacation. I've been on vacation since October 13. And I say that because I would like to thank Dr. Ricardo de Mello, Dr. Antonio Ricci, who very kindly actually invited me to participate in the respective panels where they are moderators. And unfortunately, I had to decline these invitations because I wasn't sure I'd be able to attend. But I'm here. I am here because this is the only invitation I couldn't decline. It's an invitation made by our big boss, Furtado. I'm very happy to be here. I am an absolute fan of IBPI's conference and the 40 editions. I've participated in so many of them outside of the podium. And it is actually very stressful to have concomitant panels, which makes it very difficult for those who want to attend all of them to choose between one and the other. It would be wonderful if we could attend all of them. I promise to be very brief. When we talk about INPI in the next 3 years, we have to mention the past events when I was invited by Luiz Otávio Pimentel to take over the new demo, which was created in 2016, which manages brands, geographic designs. I was given two missions. I thought they would have been impossible. The extension of the backlog and the adoption of Madrid's protocol, regardless of the other one. We had an 18-month deadline to comply with, and we did not want to run into problems for not complying. The backlog I'm talking about, in 2013, we had 507,000 requests for registrations. Between January 2014 and December last year, we had 1,117 new registrations requests. So we had 15,000 and another 1 million requests. And so all of this is the result of the work of an extraordinary team. We were able to reduce it to 100,000. The team is really extraordinary. They achieved something nobody thought we would be able to do in a relatively short period of time. In other words, in the last 3 years. And now, once we have overcome the problem, or actually the main challenge of getting rid of our backlog, and because Brazil successfully adopted Madrid's protocol, we now have a larger number of requests than expected. We have, if I'm not mistaken, 119 international requests. Of these, 97 are for certificates, and we have almost 9,000 international designations for Brazil. It is very successful. Of course, it depends on so many aspects. And I'd like to highlight that we have an extraordinary team dealing with the protocol under the organization of Lorca and Maria Eugenia. You all know her. So once we have overcome the backlog problem, and since Brazil has adopted Madrid's protocol, what we are developing at DERMA nowadays is a vast array of projects. They are being developed in parallel, of course, to the day-to-day work we have, which is what is expected from our community. We have to provide serenity and quality. It's no use for us to have 50,000 projects and taking 6 years to examine them. And also, it's no use for you to have 1 million requests and examine them without quality. We have different ongoing projects, and I will highlight a few of them here with you. One of them is the implementation of a quality review management system. I am now talking about the quality, not the individual quality, the overall quality of DERMA's work with improvement, with compliance of guidelines, so that our decisions are more and more foreseeable and easy to understand by the users. This is essential. We worked with a dichotomy, quantitative versus qualitative. Once we overcome it, we can now dedicate ourselves to improve this quality. We have other projects, the strengthening of the relationship with users. Nobody from INPI has more users than DERMA. We have a high volume of claims, and whenever we always talk about brands, I cannot forget that when we talk about the success in fighting the backlog, This was achieved in the industrial design area. We no longer have a backlog there. The times have really shortened, and we also have geographic indications. In this regard, I believe that you're familiar with the fact that we have the creation, the preparation of the National Strategy of Intellectual Property to a project that foresees that in the next 20 years we will have 450 Brazilian geographic indications. DERMA works with brands, design, and geographic indications. We do not have backlogs, and it is time for us to develop different projects. I talked about quality review. I talked about strengthening the relationship with users, consolidation of the Madrid project. Of course, it was a process that we wanted to undergo for a long time, but during Mentel's mandate and now strengthened during Furtado's mandate, this project was developed. In 2017, we were able to get to where we wanted in July 2019. Madrid's protocol has been enforced in Brazil, and I believe that this is being done very successfully. And we are also developing a project with the IAS agreement. So just as we have an international brand registration process, I hope that in a short time, short and midterm actually, we will have the international design registration protocol. We have Lisbon's treaty, but this is something for the future. We all know that this depends on our legal framework changes. The Lisbon Treaty will come to us one day, and then Brazil will definitely be inserted with the three big treaties related to international registrations, brand, industrial design in the near future, and geographic indications in the future. And of course, it is time for us, since we have overcome the backlog problem, for those who deal with brands, we can dedicate ourselves to some specific brand issues, like the extension of the interpretation of the coexistence treaty, and perhaps a less strict interpretation of Clause 26 and others of intellectual property. And we have the secondary meaning phenomenon, which will allow us to transform brand and protected brand what is acknowledged by the understanding of all of these issues. Another important aspect is finding the right moment for the precedence right. We have to decide when to do it. We also have the position brand establishment. I promise to be very short. I talked to you 5 minutes. I could have talked 50 minutes, but I won't do that. I thank you all for the opportunity given. For It's always a pleasure to talk to you. I am a fan of ABP, the quality of the professionals, And I am sure that even though we're using this format, which I actually hate, I don't know whether everybody hates this virtual format.
Caiu todo mundo? Estamos com umas questões técnicas, já já retornamos.
We're having some technical issues, but we'll be back shortly. I apologize for that. We'll be back on air shortly.
É física, né? Essa interação presencial que todos nós já estamos sentindo muita falta.
Yes, you're right. We're all missing our live event. So before I turn over to our Vice President, Dr. Gabriel Leonardi, I would like to ask a question here, a very specific question. The question is about the financial autonomy for IP. We are all dreaming about this. And we know that our budget is 1/5 of the expenses generated. So we can have a high level of investment in technology and turn ourselves into one of the most modern institutions worldwide. So now I turn over to my first Vice President, Gabriel Leonardi. Well, thank you very much. I'd like to reiterate something that ABPI has been talking for a long time. We have to manage the resources we capture, and that's part of the essence of what we do. We recently had a decision that was made, and it made clear that as the National Treasury does not return to us what we capture, we have taxes which are taxed on innovation, and this was actually an article in ABPI's journal. I commented upon it. We're going to wrap up. I wanted actually to ask Dr. Liane Lage and Furtado, our president, about the possibility of establishing partnerships. Dr. Pereira knows a lot about INPI. He's the author of 2 law projects to celebrate partnerships. And then we have another one on INPI's financial autonomy. I'd like to invite you to support us. So these are law projects which allows INPIs to celebrate partnerships would open opportunities for the healthy opportunity to outsource the pursuit of patents as we have in Japan. And so this would be a possibility to better use, for example, INPIs, retired workers. This is what happened in Japan. I want to hear Dr. Liane Lage's opinion about this. We are already pursuing this goal. We have launched an invitation for bidding, and we are going to start a pilot project this year to obtain all of the parameters for outsourcing this. In fact, we are moving towards this goal. First of all, as everything done thus far based on the work done by Dr. Julio, who had always worked with pilot projects, and this provided us the basis for our work now. We were already familiar with the work, with the different parameters, and this type of cooperation using outsourcing of search is really something that we are working with already. We also want to have the continued collaboration in the future about searches of other offices. There are different actions ahead of us for us to evaluate, pursue, move on, and get rid of our backlog. Thank you, Dr. Liani. We have different requests for us to wrap up. I am sorry, I could talk to you all afternoon here. Erica, our executive director, is here with us, and therefore we're going to wrap up. Well, thank you, Dr. Gabriel. Thank you, everyone. Before we wrap up this ceremony, I would like to thank all of those who have collaborated with our Solidary Action, and I would also like to invite you to visit our page on our website. With 30 real, you will be providing education to students in our public education network. In the afternoon, we have 4 table topics. At 6 p.m., we have a networking session with Professor Yorgi, and we also have a workshop about the future of intellectual property in the digital era. Don't miss it. I hope to see you soon.
Já faz algum tempo que falamos da velocidade das transformações do mundo. Mas, na verdade, esperávamos que essas mudanças seguissem um ritmo imposto por nós mesmos, segundo nossas próprias necessidades. Como se as mudanças fossem previsíveis ou fáceis de assimilar. Até que o mundo parou e tivemos que ouvir as notícias e ver de frente a nossa própria vulnerabilidade. Nenhum de nós esperava experimentar uma situação como esta, mas aqui estamos, imersos nela. Mas será que conseguimos aprender alguma coisa com tudo isso? Ser capaz de aprender é a marca maior da nossa condição humana. Mas tivemos que nos superar para lidar com o que chegou. E agora ficou patente o que é verdadeiramente importante para nós. Entendemos que fazemos parte de um grande ecossistema e que cada um depende dos demais. O desafio é aprender juntos os novos caminhos da transformação digital. Fazer diferença com inovação, empatia e coragem. É com esse espírito que a equipe da LD Soft está aqui pronta para ajudar você a fazer cada vez mais pelo seu cliente, oferecendo meios para você trabalhar com mais produtividade e eficiência, mesmo nas condições inesperadas do trabalho totalmente remoto. Nossas ferramentas oferecem aquilo que você precisa para dar atenção a tudo que realmente importa e que só você pode fazer. Assim, ter tempo para oferecer ao seu cliente os resultados de excelência que ele sabe que vai receber de você. Por isso, vamos continuar firmes, para que em breve possamos destampar nossos sorrisos e comemorarmos as novas conquistas juntos nos desafios que estão por vir. LD Soft, potencializando o universo jurídico através da tecnologia.